Yay. Pamiętasz im to climate puppet for me, Paul?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Alon Eisenstein. I'm with Pueblo Science. There you go. And if you want to know more about Pueblo Science and you haven't heard of us before, I'll just quickly put a plug in to say that we are a Toronto-based charity. So I'm hailing you from Toronto in Canada, and we are all staying at home. And I'm really glad that you're joining us to do some science at home when you're staying at home. And Pueblo Science does a lot of professional development training for science teachers around the world, mainly in the Philippines and Guyana, and most recently also in Jamaica. And we like to engage kids through hands-on active learning with science experiments and empower teachers around the world to use some improvisation and imagination to create neat experiments with anything that they can find lying around the house or the school or the yard or nature around them. It's also just the end of March, which is National Engineering Month. So we're really excited to have this month wrapping up. Unfortunately, lots of the activities that were scheduled to be public events had to be canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But that's not going to stop us from engaging with you directly. And so I hope that you don't mind me joining in your house right now from wherever you are. And let's get started. What do we have on the agenda? So we posted a list of materials, and I hope that you got most, if not all, of the materials with you. And we'll go one by one. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions, feel free to post them on the comments of the live stream. And we've got some members of Pueblo Science team live with us as well. And hopefully they can answer your questions in a timely manner and see how that works. So what are we going to do today? Well, assuming I'm talking mostly to kids and maybe a parent or two, or is it mostly parents and a few kids? Either way, I hope you all enjoy doing this with me. And if you happen to be a parent and your kid is not with you, then be sure to recreate this later on at home. Once this live stream will finish, we'll also post it on our Facebook page, so you can always come back and skip through the chattery part of it and just see what we're doing and hope to recreate that joy with your kids when you get home at the end of the day. So let's get started. What do we have? So first of all, I made this fancy little contraption here with the camera, so you can see both the top and the side view as we work. And so let's see, what are we going to do? So the first experiment calls for popsicle sticks, woodcraft sticks, tongue depressors. You can use either large like these or small like these. Either way it would work fine. And so the first step is to grab two sticks with you, and we're going to glue them together in an X shape. So here, let me just put the camera in a place where you can see what we're doing from the top. There we go. Okay, so step number one, we're going to have two sticks, and we're going to glue them together. And let's see if this works. There we go. So I'm going to put some glue on the top and glue them together to make a shape of an X. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to give you a heads up, and I'm going to tell you that we're going to make this little activity, we like to call it a friction climber. It's also a giveaway to what's gonna be doing at the end. And because we need to let the glue dry, we're going to do this first, but we're not going to play with it or test it until the very end. So this is setting up time, and at the end, we'll come back to it when it's drier. If you happen to have a glue gun handy, I would recommend using a glue gun rather than craft glue. And that would work faster, of course, but maybe not everybody has a glue gun at home. Okay, so we've got our X-shaped wooden sticks. Step number 2 is, you remember these? They used to sell them and use them for everything in restaurants and bars. Again, I'm not sure where you're logging in to our live stream, but here in Toronto, they've been banned in food vendors. So plastic straws are still available for craft stores. And what we're going to do is we're going to take one straw and we're going to cut it to length. And what we want to make sure is that the length of the straw matches the width of the wooden stick. Okay, so I'm going to roughly place it over to make sure it's the right width. And I'm going to then cut 2 pieces of roughly the same length. Oops, that went flying to the floor. I'll do another one. There we go. Okay, so now we have the 2 wooden sticks and we have 2 pieces of straw. And what we're going to do next is we want to glue the 2 pieces of straw to the wooden pieces. Now this is really, really important. We have to get them to the right position, but also in the right geometry, because if we don't get the right geometry, we might not get it to work properly. So the way you want to look at it is, if your X-shaped wooden sticks are 90 degrees to one another, we want to recreate the 90 degrees angle between the 2 pieces of straws. So here, if I'm going to hold it up to the camera, okay, so we want to make sure that they're aligned 90 degrees to each other on different pieces of wood. So you see that how I'm placing them widthwise on the 2 pieces of wooden sticks. And you can see that if we actually move them closer to each other, they make a 90 degrees angle to one another, right? So that's what we're going to do. So this is, again, if you have a glue gun handy, I would recommend using a glue gun. That would probably be the easiest and most sturdiest way. Otherwise, you can use regular tape. That also works. Again, this has to be sturdy, so we want to make sure that we wrap around all the way on both sides, and it has to be super, super sturdy, because that's going to hold all the action of this climbing puppet. And again, I'm going to put these 2 pieces together, and now we have the 2 wooden pieces and we have the 2 pieces of straws at 90 degrees to one another. Okay, and we can let this dry. I'm gonna put this aside now and bring a piece of paper. So now this is where the artsy and craftsy part of this activity comes into play. For anybody who's familiar in the science education world, we're using a lot of STEM education: science, technology, engineering, and math. But a lot of people are saying, hey, you should put the arts as well, because part of the education component is also the expressive component. So the arts, and so we're going to use this to make a STEAM activity, and therefore we can now use this. We can now use this piece of paper to make a bit of artsy component to it. Okay, what are we gonna do? So we're gonna take markers. And we're going to make sure that it fits the size of this climbing puppet, we can just draw roughly to make sure that we cut it to size. And this is where you can be really creative. You can make it super small. Here, I'll show you. My daughter yesterday made this. So you see how, oops, camera's over here. A little strawberry person with 2 arms. And you see that you can make it small and just glue it to the center. Or we can trace over. We can trace over here and try and make it more compatible with the physical shape of our stick. So here we go. This is one. We can make this round, and 2 and 2. Now, if you're little kids watching this video and you're not old enough to use these scissors by yourself, that's probably a good time to ask your parents for help. If you're old enough to use the scissors yourself, then by all means do that as well. We can actually leave this. I'm gonna leave a little head. I want to make a little person, but it doesn't have to be a person. It can be anything. So there we go. I've got a little person now. If I've got a little person, we can draw a mouth. We can draw a little nose. How about pink eyes? Have you ever seen anybody with pink eyes before? Curly hair like mine. There we go. Oops. Yep. There we go. Curly hair. Should I put it this way? There we go. Now it's not upside down for you. We can put an arm. We can put another arm. Here's a V-neck shape. Oops. There we go. And whoop. There we go. Okay. How about a blue shirt? Now, I'm not gonna make you watch me with my very poor drawing skills. That would be a very boring live stream. But when you decide that you want to make the most of this activity, this is where your artistic flair can really come to life. Okay? Okay, cool. What next? Well, now we can just glue it, and we're gonna put it on not the side with the straws, but on the back side. So we're gonna put it like this, and again, we can use craft glue. Here, I'm gonna put some craft glue here and craft glue there, and we're gonna glue this nicely together. There we go. Okay, so my climbing person is now ready. You could see that I could actually made it even longer to hide the sticks completely, but that's okay. Okay, so this is where we're gonna tell our little crafty person to sit for a while and dry up and let the glue harden. And let's try something else. Let me just check a bit over the comments. I see, okay, I don't see any questions or any complaints, so I guess I'm okay to move on, right? Cool. Okay, so let's put this to the side, away from everything else, and let's see what's next. So we don't need pens. Okay, what was our next trip? Okay, so the next one is going to be a party trick. So what is a party trick? This is one of my favorite. If you've ever watched my account on social media, you've seen this picture before. So let me just recreate this again. So this is a great party trick. Happy to always show this around. So imagine when all this pandemic is going to die out, hopefully sooner than later, we're going to go back to restaurants and meeting people and having dinner parties. And then you want to amuse your friend or your guests or your parents or your grandparents and whatnot. You need just two things. Well, three actually. You need a spoon, a bit of tissue paper, and you also need your nose. So here's what we're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to take this spoon, I'm going to dry it well with this tissue paper, and I'm going to make sure that it's nice and dry. Okay? We don't want it to be wet, we don't want it to be oily. The next thing is we want to make sure that we remove also remove any residual oil or fat from the skin of our nose. So I'm gonna wipe it clean. I'm not gonna blow my nose. I'm just gonna wipe the top of my nose. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now, the more you do it, especially if you're doing it many, many times over, you end up getting a red nose. So I would recommend using soft tissue paper and try to keep it to not too many times in a row. I'm speaking here from experience, of course. There we go. Okay, so is my nose red enough? Okay. Okay, now here's the fun part. So you don't need. I was overdoing it anyway. So if I put the spoon on the nose like this, it's gonna slide because of gravity, right? Now, if your gravity seems to be working properly, spoon should fall down. If you happen to have issues with your gravity, please make sure to fix it before trying this trick. So I'm gonna exhale warm breath from my mouth over the spoon, and then place it over my nose. Sometimes you need to do it multiple times. Here, I'll clean it again. Sometimes it needs a little more tender love care. There we go. Now, this looks really, really silly. Can you see how silly it looks? It does look silly. There you go. Now, if you're not afraid of making yourself look terribly silly, you can also try this with a plastic fork. Sorry, a spoon. Works a bit same. You might need to press it a bit harder, but it also sticks. And if you feel extremely adventurous, you can actually try the other side. Clean your forehead. And then this requires a bit of pushing, but it might actually stick to your forehead as well. Now, I'm pretty sure you're not going to take me serious anymore, right? But let's talk about the science behind this. Why is it sliding? We said so before, it's gravity, right? Gravity is pulling it down. But what happens when I blow my warm breath over the spoon? write down in the comments. I'll keep quiet for 2 minutes and see if you can tell me why is it important to exhale to make it stick. So it didn't stick before, and after I exhaled, suddenly it sticks. Well, if you do it right. Any guesses? Any guesses? The good thing about watching this over the internet is you can always cheat and Google it, right? Rather than try and explain it yourself. Let's see. Oop. I don't see any guesses coming. Okay, I'm going to challenge you on this. You're probably thinking, hey, you're probably making it all wet, like you blow air on a cold window and it makes it fog, right? But if we fog up the spoon, if we fog up the spoon, right, the same way we fog up a cold piece of glass in winter, or maybe not winter, when we go down a slide, it's wet as well, but it's slippery. So a wet slide is slippery and you slip faster than a dry slide. But on the spoon, it will actually stick. And so the magic or the hidden science behind it is it's still the water, it's the vapor condensation over the spoon, but the condensation is a really, really thin layer of water, and it's usually very patchy, and that creates friction. But when we pour water on a water slide, we pour lots and lots and lots of water, and then the water creates layers and they slide on top of each other, so it actually becomes a lubricant, not sticky. But even that lubricant, there's still a sticky part of water sticking to the plastic slide, and any water on top of it will just slide faster. Okay, so we can stick a spoon on our nose. We can stick a spoon on our forehead, which is similar in idea as well, right? So we stick it, it creates friction, and the spoon is actually easier especially if you give it some pressure. It sticks a bit harder, but it's more stable mainly because the spoon is lighter, so it has to resist a much weaker gravity force than the metal spoon. When we're all done here, I'll share a picture that I have one of these really big serving spoons that's twice the length, and it's twice the weight, and I'm balancing on my nose as well. Did that a few years ago. Okay, so now you're all skilled, and you can do this at home with your parents or your kids, or next time you're at a dinner party when all this pandemic thing dies away, hopefully sooner than later. Let's try another one. Okay, so here's another trick. This trick, we're gonna try 2 different ways of doing this trick. This is a balancing trick, and so what you need is 2 spoons. I'm sorry, forks. I'm fixated on the spoons right now. So we have 2 forks. Ideally, they should be of similar size and all. And you need a little coin. Size is not too crucial. However, the bigger the coin, the easier it will be to manipulate and get it right. So I would recommend using something like a quarter that we have here in Canada. A quarter is a good size. I also tried with a smaller one, a nickel or a dime or a loonie, which is a $1. Again, for people outside of Canada, a loonie is $1 coin. And you can see that the dollar coin is slightly bigger. It's actually not round completely. So you can try different sizes of coins to see which one works better. Okay, let's go back to our top view, side view. Okay, so we're gonna have a glass. Okay, so we're gonna have a glass here, and I'm gonna take 2 spoons. Sorry, I'm calling these forks spoons again. I don't know what's wrong with me there. And we're gonna try and balance these spoons, these forks. I'll just call them spoons for now on, and you know that I'm talking about forks, right? So we can balance them like this, but we can also try and balance them over a coin. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna slide the coin slightly through the teeth of one fork, and then I'm gonna take the second fork and I'm gonna slide it again so it's roughly centered. I don't know if you can see here, it's sticking out from one side and it's sticking more from the inside. And then we're going to try and find a place. So you can see the top view now. I'm gonna start sliding this. This takes practice, but I'm gonna start sliding the coin along the edge, the rim of the glass, until it doesn't slide or fall anymore. Let's see. Now you might need to practice and it might fall. And that's a good reminder that failing is part of learning. And when things don't work, that's when we learn better. Okay, let's see now. Try it again. Oop, didn't go again. I'm gonna try one more time. And, oops. And there we go. Okay, what do we see now? Okay, so we have 2 forks, and the 2 forks are simply resting on the coin. They're not glued or anything. And the coin is resting on the rim of the glass barely. And I do want to give you a word of caution that this might need some might need some practice, but it also might need experimenting with the shape of the fork. So maybe the first fork you're trying out is not the best shape for it to make it work easier. But you might also need to play around with the size of your coin, and you might also need to play with the glass you're using, because certain glasses have way curvier rim than others, and so depending on how curvy the rim is, it might be harder or more difficult to get it right. Okay, so let's try this again here. I'm gonna try this again. Okay, oops. Okay, so again, this is a great dinner trick to amaze people at how you are a master of gravity and balance. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna try and find a different place there. Oops. Okay, and you can see that even for me, I've done it a few times, more than a few times, and even then it doesn't always work perfectly. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now you have a side view and you have a top view. Now something to note, how come it's working? And you can see that it's pivoting. There's a pivot point right where the coin meets the glass. And if you've ever been to a seesaw, I see a question here. No, the coin doesn't stick to the glass. In fact, the little but tiniest agitation, it will fall. it's absolutely perfectly nothing more than gravity that holds it in place. And even though the glass rim is slippery, it's really finding that sweet spot where it works. But the thing here about the balance is that what we've got here is a understanding what center of gravity is. And the center of gravity is for every physical structure, we can find the place where the center of gravity is, which is the point of balance. And so if we place an object on its center of gravity, it will be perfectly balanced. All the weight from one side is equal to the weight on the other side. Now, the stability of this balancing structure also depends on whether the center of gravity for the object is above or below the resting point. And so in this case, you can see the forks are slightly tilting below the rim of the glass, and that makes it more stable because that brings the center of gravity below the rim of the glass, and therefore it's not just the resting point is perfectly balanced from left to right, but the center of gravity is below the resting point, which makes it more stable. And this is something that a lot of engineers need to understand, how to build structures that are more stable. The lower the center of gravity is below the resting point of the object, the more stable it is. The problem starts when the center of gravity is above the resting point, and that makes things less stable. And a good example is a car. A car's center of gravity physically cannot go below the road, and therefore it's always above the road, which is the resting point, and therefore cars always have risk of flipping over. And that being said, the lower we bring the center of gravity closer to the road, the more stable the car will be. So in this case, we have center of gravity, we have the luxury of having it below the resting point. Let me show you a different version. By the way, if you're able to get this to work, you can have it. And also if you have the spoon, please do take a picture and share it on our page. We'd love to see how you guys are following through and succeed in getting this right. But I want to show you a different version of the same trick that might be slightly more impressive depending on your liking. So we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to try it again with a fork, but this time we're going to use a spoon. Where's the spoon? Nope, not this one. Not this one. This one? Oh, there we go. Okay. So here's the same trick, but slightly different version. So this time around, we're going to use a fork and a spoon. Okay. If you can't get it to work, don't get discouraged. Try and try again. It's just getting the balance right. So it takes practice. So this time we're going to use a fork and a spoon, and you can see how I squeezed the fork, the spoon into the fork. So the spoon is over the center two teeth and under the external teeth. But this time around, what we have is we need to make sure first of all, we want to make sure that the spoon and the fork we chose are roughly the same weight. And so you can see that if I let it rest on my finger, it's balanced. So to get this right, we have to start by getting the right spoon and fork combination that we can balance it on the center. And then we're going to take a toothpick. So this time, instead of a coin, this is a toothpick. And I'm going to take the toothpick and I'm going to squeeze it in between the teeth of the fork and the fork, and then try to find the resting point again where it's resting nice and balanced. Here's the fun part. I'm going to take my toothpick now, and I'm going to slide it, and I'm going to try and find where the resting point is for the toothpick over the rim of the glass. And again, you can see that now this looks also impressive, because now we have the fork and the spoon, and they're resting on a toothpick, and the toothpick is resting over the rim of the glass. Isn't that cool? Now, the good thing about this version is that, first of all, you don't need to worry about getting two forks holding onto a coin. That's a challenge. So in this case, the fork and the spoon are actually rigidly bound, so it's easier on that side. But the other part which makes this easier to set up is that the toothpick is less slippery than a coin, so it's also easier to find the place of balance. So once again, we have a place where the center of gravity of the spoon-fork combination resting over the toothpick is perfectly centered, such that half of the weight is on the fork side and half of the weight is on the spoon side. But to make this work and balance and stable, you see how the fork and the spoon are tilting below. You can see it from the side angle. You can see how the fork and the spoon are below the rim of the glass. So it's actually quite a long way down, that the center of gravity is not exactly where the resting point is. It's actually straight down a line below the resting point, which makes it way more stable. Okay, now here's taking it to the extreme. How are we going to take this to the extreme? Well, if you know anything about science, is fire makes everything more spectacular. Now, if you are kids watching this, please do not use fire by yourself. This is absolutely only with adult supervision. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to strike a match. Oop, come on. There we go. And I'm going to light up one side and the other, and we're going to see what happens. Will this burn and fall over? What do you think? Will it or will it not? Oh, it's still burning. Will it fall? I don't know about this. I don't know. And look at that. What happened? What happened there? You see this? It's still glowing. I won't touch it. It's just going to die out and fall by itself anyway. But this shows you that the only thing that matters is the two resting points. The resting point where the toothpick meets the fork and the spoon combination, and the other resting point where it sits on the glass, on the rim of the glass. Now, the reason why the fire died right next to the resting point is that, well, first of all, the closer it gets to the glass on this side and the metal on that side, the glass and the metal are actually really good at absorbing heat. So all the heat from the fire of the toothpick is sucked into the glass or sucked into the metal, and that makes this the heat lower. And because fire has to have fuel, oxygen, and heat all together, reducing the heat makes it burn less. But the other part is also the stress. The stress point where all the weight is at will actually make it more dense and will, again, slow it down from propagating. So if the wood is burning and there's oxygen inside the wood, the more dense it becomes, it has less oxygen as well. So all the oxygen is released, and it has less it has more internal density, so it slows down, heat goes away to the glass and the spoon and the fork, and that's the end of that. Okay, I hope you like that one. Okay, so fire. Nothing beats fire, right? Okay, so I've got one last trick to show you before we go back to our little climbing person. So what do we need for this activity? Whoop. Okay, we have a little bit of dish soap. We have a little dish soap, and we're gonna have pepper, a pepper grinder, and a bowl of water. And we can use Q-tips, although you could use your fingers, but you don't have to if you want to keep your fingers dry. Okay, so what we're gonna do, step number one, we're gonna grind some pepper that's gonna float over the water in the bowl. Okay, so you don't need much pepper, you just want it to make it show that it's nice and black, that you can see it. Okay, next step would be, we're gonna take my little Q-tip, and if I dip it to the water, you see nothing really happens, right? Some pepper sticks to it. You can see it up close. You can see some pepper sticks to it, but nothing spectacular really. But if I let's take the other side, and I'm gonna dip it in dish soap. I'm gonna count to 3 and see what happens. Ready? Okay. I'm gonna count to 3, and then I'm gonna dip the Q-tip side that has a bit of soap on it, dish soap, and see what happens. Ready? And just as a reminder, when we had the dry Q-tip, nothing happened. It's absorbed some water and some pepper on it. Okay, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Oop. Did you see that? You can try it from this side. Oop. Look at that. I can try it from this side again. Oh, now it's pushing it that side. What's happening? Let's try this again. Here, let's move this used bowl. Okay, and I'm gonna put some more pepper. There we go. Okay, and I don't know if the contrast is gonna be to see it. Let's see. Is this any better? No. Okay. So I apologize if the lighting doesn't make it vivid enough. But basically, you can use your finger and tap it 1, 2, 3, punk, and you see how it all squeezes away. So what is happening here? What is happening here? So here's a neat way to understand what's happening. So when we put the soap in the water, soap will both do two things. Soap likes to dissolve in water, of course, because that's why we can wash the coronavirus off our hands, because when we scrub our hands with soap, the soap will actually remove the germs and the viruses away, and the dirt, and then when we wash it with water, the water dissolves the soap. It washes the soap away. But some of the soap molecules, the little particles of soap, actually don't dissolve into water. They stay on the surface of the water. They float. And so if I'm going to use this to explain, you see what happens here. These are little glass beads from the Mancala game we have at home. So it's always great to play with that. So if these are my floating pieces of pepper on the bowl of water, and I'm going to use metal balls to mimic my my soap molecules, look what happens when I pour my soap molecules from the center in the same way we put the Q-tip from the center. Ready? 1, 2, 3. You see how all the soap molecules start from the center and pushing outside. And as they push outside, all the pepper powder gets squished to the sides, to the outside of the glass bowl. So this is really what's happening there. So the molecules of the soap will disperse on the surface, and as they start from the center, they just disperse and they push everything away as they try to move away from one another, and they push each other further and further out to a place where they're happy. Okay, so I think we're close to the end of this session, and this is a good time to go back to our little climbing man. Where's our little climbing man? So let's see. So little climbing person. I think the glue is hard now. So we'll see how nice, how stiff this becomes now. Okay, and now what you want to make sure to do to use your climbing man, what we want to do is we're going to take some string. So you can take either nylon string or yarn or cotton string. It doesn't really matter. But you want to make sure that when you cut it, you take the two ends of your string. Length isn't really important, but I would recommend at least a meter, if not 2 meters, to actually have some fun with it. But you want to make sure that when you put it through the plastic straw, you actually start from the top, from the side of the head. So one side, one length of or one end of the string goes from the head, going right or left, your left, my right, and the other one goes from the other one. So you want to make sure that when you push this string through, it is actually both ends of the string are going through from the side of the head downwards towards the feet. Okay, now this is optional. You don't have to do this, but again, I would recommend, we didn't put this in the materials, but if you happen to have clips, to make sure that the string doesn't fly off the straw, this is where you can then take a piece of a paper clip and just tie a paper clip at the end of the two sides of the string. Again, if you don't have it, that's okay, but be wary that the string might fly off the straw. And now we have our climbing person. So let me just get the string sorted out. Okay, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna tie it down here. Okay, so here's my straw man. Can't see this. Anyway, here's my straw man, and I'm hanging it over the lamp in this case, and I'm gonna pull on this. Okay, and as you pull, you want to make sure that you keep it nice and tense. So keep the tension, and then alternate between left and right. So left pulls, right follows up, and then right pulls and left follows up. And then when you let go, it falls all the way down. And then we can do again, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Now again, if you pull too tight, it might actually tear the two straws off. So you want to glue them super, super hard. But otherwise, you want to make sure it's tense but not too strongly pulled out. Okay? And that's called the friction climber. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Now, how does that work? How come it's climbing like this when there's clearly no motor, there's no grabbing mechanism, but in fact there is in the way of the motion going left, right, because what you see is when the string goes through the straw that's horizontal, it creates friction by 90 degrees angle going in and then out. But the vertical piece of straw, there's no friction, or there's very low friction passing through. So that's why it's easier to slide on one and the other. And then when we flip it the other way around, now you can see why I made a point that the 90-degree angle between the two straws is crucial, because when the climber flips to one side, you want very low friction moving vertically, but the other arm will be horizontal, creating very large sense of friction. You can actually show this. This is a great way to show this to your kids if you want to, which is if you have a piece of rope. I'm gonna put it on this side, and you can take a piece of toilet paper. Okay, if we actually take a little piece of toilet paper, and you can ask your kid to then try and slide. If you try and slide it vertically, when the paper toilet roll is vertical or parallel to the wire, there's no friction at all. It's so easy. But if you force it to twist, here we'll do a top view. If I force it to twist at 90 degrees, creating 90 degrees with the rope leaving and the rope entering, now you can see that your kid will have a lot of friction moving it along the wire. So that's the friction that stops sliding on one hand, while the other one is vertical and it slides with ease. And I'll just leave this with you to remember. And again, I see some people are calling in from the Philippines and maybe other warm places, but this reminds me of a very, very crucial thing that I've learned when I came to Canada, which is how to skate. If you've ever learned how to skate, they tell you that when you're skating, when the two skates are facing the ice, parallel, you're sliding. But if you want to actually push hard to get your motion right, one of the skates has to be at 90 degrees, and then the one that's facing forward is going to slide easy with low friction, but the one perpendicular is the one creating all the friction on the ice, and that's the one you're pushing away from. So that's the Canadian experience of a friction motion, of alternating between pushing on one hand or leg and then alternating between them. I think that's all the time we have for today. If you really enjoyed this live session, please leave us congratulating comments in the comments, and we will think about what would be next. Should we do this every week? Should we not do it ever again? Should we do it again but find someone else to do it because you don't like the presenter? Or maybe mix and match, try different things. I am mindful that I'm asking people to bring up stuff from whatever they have in the house. That might be very limiting depending on what you actually have right now. With the pandemic, we don't want to send you out shopping, especially for doing science activities. And we're also mindful that you probably don't want to waste toilet paper in today's world, where some toilet paper stores are, or some stores are empty of toilet paper at all. So I hope you enjoyed it. And happy National Engineering Month will be ending in a few days. So next time, if we do this again, will be in a month of April. And thank you again for joining. Have a great day or good night, depending on your time zone. And keep safe, keep healthy, stay at home, and do science at home. Bye.